Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Woodlawn Station. My name is Chris Gambino. I'm joined by Colin McGee and Dominic Noto. And this is the first time we're talking since December, at least on this show. We've talked since then.
No.
Um, we actually don't know each other at all outside of this show.
Yeah.
We're an hour later. We got moved to prime time. And so we're on. Yeah, James wanted us on national TV now, so we're on prime time.
We're famous.
And
Give the people what they want.
listen,
They say Woodlawn Station. We're giving them
guess-
Woodlawn Station.
we gotta start with, I guess, the football game, if that's what you want to call it, that happened this past Sunday.
Football was played.
Yeah, it was the worst Super Bowl I ever watched. Listen, if the game is good, that solves everything, right? I've never been someone who's big on like the halftime show or like the whatever commercials, whatever. If it's a good game, then it's a good Super Bowl. That was the worst game, one of the worst football games I ever watched, because it was a complete blowout. And
Especially from Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, I mean, he was very incompetent in that game. Definitely not one of his best games at all. One of his worst, absolutely. And call me biased, but I don't want to see the Eagles win the Super Bowl. So seeing them absolutely rout the Chiefs is not exactly what I wanted to see. That's paired with what I believe is I don't know if I'd call it a mid-halftime show, but I'd say, listen, I know he's a very talented artist, but I don't know if that was a Super Bowl halftime performance. All right, because I guess I'm someone who's like, I enjoy like seeing like, there's fireworks and pyrotechnics and
Chris, you're more of a Drake guy, or
it has nothing to do. It has nothing to do with that. He did as good of a job as he could have done. I don't know how much of a Super Bowl halftime show that is. Because again, all there was a lot of choreography, right? There's a lot of dancers, but the
production was good, but
it's just
the catalog wasn't there.
You want to think of like the big picture. This is going on a football field, and that's really something that involved a lot of up close camera shots. That's not. I don't know if that's what I'm looking for in a Super Bowl halftime show.
I mean, most halftime shows are more so made for TV. I mean, I saw in stadium views of the Kendrick show. I mean, it's really only a small part of the field that's taken up. So most of them are made for TV, but especially like you were talking about the catalog, if it's not there, then people aren't going to be as excited. I think the best halftime shows is when it appeals to mostly all age demographics. That's the thing. That's when the NFL halftime shows usually is most successful.
Yeah.
I think it's not like when Bruno Mars did it with like the Red Hot Chili Peppers and like Beyonce, I think, came on. Like it wasn't like that. I mean, we could be music critics for the next 45 minutes, but
this is a sports show.
Yes, we can move on from the music, but
listen,
I think we all agree that it wasn't what it needed to be.
Listen, to be fair, I mean, it's that was probably the biggest talking point of the whole game is his performance. Again, great. Did a great job
because Patrick Mahomes was so bad. Yeah,
he was so bad. The Eagles, I mean, there was really no flaw in their performance. There really was nothing.
They didn't
about
blitz once, and it felt like they were blitzing every play.
And you know what? I mean, listen, it's still. I mean, it's the Super Bowl, so it still was. I mean, got insane viewing numbers, and I mean that's
most viewed game.
I mean, yeah, listen,
most viewed Super Bowl ever.
That's incredible. That's really incredible. But we don't care about the Eagles. We like the Giants. Colin.
Well, I also do still want to talk about the Super Bowl because there is not a person on the world who is more upset with that outcome probably than me. Because the Philadelphia Eagles are once again your Super Bowl champions. And listen, despite the fact of my feelings for them, which you both very well know, you have to give it to them. They deserve the Super Bowl. They were just simply the best team in football. And it makes me defeated to say this, but what can you say about them? I mean, the way that Howie Roseman ran that front office, the way that Howie Roseman puts together that football team is nothing short of remarkable. We're talking about they won the Super Bowl back in 2018, and then in 2020 they only won 4 games. Carson Wentz falls off a cliff. But this is what separates the Eagles and separates Howie Roseman than so many more front offices in the NFL. He saw Jalen Hurts in the second round, and they already paid Carson Wentz. He was their franchise quarterback, and people forget this a lot. That 2017 season, if Carson Wentz stays healthy, he would have been the MVP of this league. It wouldn't have been Tom Brady that year. Carson Wentz was by far and away going to be the MVP that year. The Eagles won the Super Bowl, and he still drafted Jalen Hurts because what Howie Roseman does, what the Eagles do is they make aggressive moves. People were talking about, they're just stockpiling all these Georgia defensive players. Well, it was for good reason. We saw Jalen Carter, a guy who obviously did have character concerns going into that draft class, but he was a guy who many people thought could have been the first overall pick in that draft. And because of the Eagles and the way they're run, he just falls into their laps at number 7. And of course, we have to talk about Saquon Barkley in the year that he had debatably the greatest running back season of all time. And with Saquon Barkley, the view on running backs for so long was that, and this is what Joe Shane said last offseason too with the Giants, the running back position is devalued, and people think that the running back position is not going to translate to wins, is more of a luxury piece. Well, the Eagles could afford Saquon Barkley, and you saw how much of a difference he made to this team. I mean, every week it killed me to watch it. It killed me to watch Saquon Barkley be maybe the best running back season that we've seen maybe ever. I mean, he didn't get the rushing record. He probably would have got it if he played in that week 17 game against a week 18 game, I should say, against the Giants. But there's not much more you can say about the Eagles. Patrick Mahomes maybe had the worst game of his career. He kind of stat padded near the end. He had that long touchdown to Xavier Worthy, which I saw some Chiefs fans online kind of coping over. But they already gave Nick Sirianni the Gatorade bath by then. I'm not really moved by that. But the crazy part of it for the Chiefs was even when they were down 17-0, I thought they still could have come back, because people forget this, but every single one of the 5 Super Bowls that Patrick Mahomes has played in, the Chiefs have been down by at least 10 points. He's been able to carry them back in free, but this game felt so similar to that Super Bowl against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We just saw that the blueprint to beating Patrick Mahomes is to make him uncomfortable, really apply the pressure, make him make those off-platform throws, which really led to that pick six from Cooper DeJean and the other interception he threw to Zach Bond. But I can't do anything else here but credit the Philadelphia Eagles. Listen, they deserve it. They're going to be around for a while, whether I like it or not. They're always going to be a factor. And yeah, I mean, the Philadelphia Eagles are Super Bowl champions. But you mentioned the Giants. I think that
Georgia players, and they're all amazing.
So
Georgia players on the Eagles.
So you.
All right, what's going on?
So the New York Giants. Okay, Chris. The New York Giants.
Where did that come from?
Who knows? The New York Giants.
No one knows. No one knows.
The New York Football Giants were in the midst. The last time we had this show, they still only had 2 wins. They're in the middle of the worst losing streak in franchise history. They actually tied it. And with 2 games left in the season, they played the Indianapolis Colts. And in that game, the New York Giants and Drew Lock did something that this franchise has not done in almost a decade. They scored 45 points. A team that averaged, I believe it was 15 or 14 points a game, scored 45 points. And because of that performance, they no longer have the number 1 pick in the draft. So they hold the number 3 pick in the draft now, for reference. I can't believe that game happened. I know it's been over a month, but the way I felt in that moment, in the midst of the worst season in franchise history, everything going wrong, to see Drew Lock have the game of his life with 5 touchdown passes. I think it was 5 touchdown passes Drew Lock had in that game. And the Giants put up 45 points. I mean, it almost felt insulting. And I saw a lot of players back then talking about, oh, the guys are going to come there and compete. How could you root against them as a fan? Well, personally, I feel like that we could talk about how it was a culture win, because that's what a lot of, the media guys are trying to peddle, that, oh, it was a great culture win for the Giants. Where's the culture for this team in September and October? It hasn't been there over the past decade. We talk about, oh, we get culture. Exactly. It's crickets. That's what the Giants are in September and October. That's what they've always historically been, as long as I've been watching this football team. We talk about, oh, November, December, the Giants. But September or October, they're not there. But anyway, the big talk going into the offseason was whether or not Brian Daboll and Joe Shane were going to be fired. And crickets is also another good representation for what they ended up doing, because both Brian Daboll and Joe Shane retained their jobs. Now, I don't like it from the... Yes, thank you very much. Brian Daboll and Joe Shane retained their jobs. And the most troubling part of this all was the press conference that John Mara gave the following day. What John Mara said is that he said that, I'm not confident that that the team is better than it was a couple of years ago. And he also said that it's basically he's forcing Brian Daboll and Joe Shane into a win now situation next year. So what he's doing is he's making basically a lame duck GM. And at this point, if they can't figure it out, a lame duck head coach basically have to make the playoffs next season to save their jobs, which is an absolutely ridiculous ass when you look at this roster, you look at a free win team. I don't see how it happens. That's when we get into the crazy rumors, because this is what always scared me about Joe Shane, is that if you have a compromised general manager, especially in a draft or in an offseason when the Giants are going to have to address the quarterback position, because the only quarterback that is on this roster is Tommy DeVito. So no matter what you say, the quarterback room has to be figured out. It's just Tommy DeVito. They're either going to draft a quarterback, or they're going to get a guy via free agency or trading. Joe Shane is going to do whatever possible measure he can to save his job. And this is what Dave Gettleman did. Dave Gettleman made moves near the end of his tenure because he knew he was out the door and he ruined this team's cap space. I think Joe Shane's going to do the exact same thing because wouldn't you? If you only had a year left of this job, you were going to do whatever you possibly can to maximize as much wins out of this team for next year as possible, which is going to hurt us in the long term. Maybe he does it the smart way. Maybe, say he drafts Cam Ward or he drafts Shedeur Sanders. There's been a lot of talk about Shedeur Sanders to the Giants recently. But what scares me about the NFL draft is that I think that no matter what, even if Joe Shane and Brian Dable are not convinced that Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders is the franchise quarterback going forward, they're still going to draft him because they have to. And that's why you never put yourself in that situation. As a general manager, you never put yourself in a compromised situation where you absolutely have to do it because they have to now. And I'm starting to hear rumors of Matthew Stafford possibly going to the Giants. I mean, I think that Joe Shane would do it. I think that if that situation is presented to him, he's going to do it because he's trying to save his job. Listen, I think Matthew Stafford would be a great addition to this team. Is he the best for the long-term picture? That's debatable. But regardless, with a lame duck general manager, you are basically... you're risking him setting the team back years. And I hope he doesn't. I hope it works out in this offseason because no matter what way you slice it, this is a massive offseason for this Giants team in terms of the future. I mean, we talked about how this is probably the most monumental offseason we've had since 2019. And obviously, that's the offseason that brought us Daniel Jones, the offseason that Odell Beckham Jr. gets traded away. So there's going to be a lot of times I'm going to talk about the Giants this semester on the show, especially leading up to the NFL draft, but and even free agency as well. But I wouldn't have kept Joe Shane, and by nature, by not keeping Joe Shane, you don't keep Brian Dable. But ultimately, John Mara seems to be, almost embarrassed by how much he has to fire general managers and head coaches. But once again, that's also a product of you not having a good process. Also a product of you constantly letting your family members sit in the front office, having Chris Mara, Tim McDonald, those guys who are related to you. You're talking about his nephews in the front office. That's not going to lead to success. I'm sorry, functional organizations are not run off nepotism. But that's
the Jets do that.
Exactly. Look how well that works out for them. Nepotism never works in a sports front office. And truthfully, if the Giants never change that, I don't think it ever changes. But all we can hope for, and what basically John Mara said in that press conference he's hoping for, is he needs Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders to be the next Jaden Daniels. Because that's the only way this franchise is going to turn around next year in the immediate future. It pains me to say, but I think that's what has to happen. You need a savior. You need a messiah. And we'll see if Joe Shane's the guy who can do it. His track record makes me think he's not going to be able to, but all I can do is hold out hope. Right.
And he's never had that opportunity to do it, right? Because they kept insisting that Daniel Jones was the guy. I don't know if you mentioned this, but, there's the whole saga right now with Cleveland, right? Mm-hmm. And we have to watch them. And the guy that we're looking at, or the guy we've been looking at is Shedeur Sanders, who... it seems like, listen, there are guys who imply that they'd like to play for a certain team, right? In all sports, you'll see that. You'll see a guy who will imply that he grew up a Yankee fan and he'll never end up joining the Yankees. What Shedeur Sanders is doing, where he's wearing Giants gear, he's wearing Giants cleats.
He's twerking for the Giants.
I mean, what he's doing is insane, and I've never seen anything like it in sports at all, ever. Coming out of college, dad, playing for the Cowboys, even, how much he really is, trying to get the Giants to draft him. I mean, he could really turn down a pick by Cleveland to get to the Giants. And I mean, that would be interesting to see, but it's definitely a nerve-wracking couple of months as a Giants fan. And I mean, our Super Bowl's in April.
And one more fan I absolutely had to talk about on this show was Eli Manning not making the Hall of Fame. Eli Manning not being a first ballot Hall of Famer, which my message to the Hall of Fame voters is I don't know how you can do it. I don't understand it. We're talking about usually the Pro Football Hall of Fame has at least 5 players making it every year. And the rule is that's always just been the standard. Apparently they changed the rule just this year that it could be 4 to 8, just so that the writers could snub Eli Manning just because they didn't think he deserves the Hall of Fame, the first ballot distinction. I mean, how dare you? How dare you do that to Eli Manning? We're talking once again about a 2-time Super Bowl MVP. We're talking about a guy who ranks top 11 in passing yards, passing touchdowns, a guy who has, I believe it is the second longest streak of all time for most consecutive starts. Once again, you cannot tell the story of the National Football League without Eli Manning. What he did in those 2 Super Bowls, beating the greatest dynasty of all time, the greatest team of all time, the 2007 Patriots. And it wasn't like this is the narrative you're always going to hear about Eli Manning in the Super Bowls. You're always going to hear, the defense was outstanding. That 2011 team, the defense ranked near the bottom of the NFL. And they won that year because Eli Manning had the most combined passing yards, mind you, for a regular season and postseason of all time. And I don't care. People are going to talk about, oh, he had a mediocre record. That record is mostly piled up by poor teams that are drafted by Jerry Reese near the later stage of his career. People are going to talk about, oh, there's a lot of interceptions. He played in a much more highly competitive defensive era than what we see now. And he also played in the greatest quarterback era, in my opinion, of all time. So to suggest to me that he's not a first ballot Hall of Famer, because people are always going to say, oh, he's nothing without the Super Bowls. So yes, let's take away the most crowning achievement you can have in the sport, which he did twice, by the way, against the greatest player of all time. We're going to take that away from him. That's why he shouldn't make the Hall of Fame. It's ridiculous to me. And I don't know if you guys have any strong opinions on that, but as someone who, Eli Manning is my favorite athlete of all time, someone who really got me into watching the Giants, got me passionate about sports. I just had to go to bat for him today. I think that was ridiculous what the Hall of Fame voters did.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, very simply, from winning 2 Super Bowls, spending what he means to the Giants organization. You know, you talk about the history of football can't be written without Eli Manning. I mean, you absolutely can't write the history of the New York Giants without Eli Manning. I think he's probably maybe not the greatest New York Giants player of all time, but I think the most popular. I think he's the most well-known Giant. I don't think anyone represents the Giants organization better or more than he does or has. I guess Bill Parcells is up there.
Lawrence Taylor.
Sure. Yeah.
Michael Strahan.
Yeah.
Daniel Jones.
Eli.
Never forget that playoff win at Minnesota.
Listen, from getting drafted in the number 1 overall and that whole saga, right? Doing, of course, what we possibly could see from Shedeur Sanders. I mean, everything he meant for the Giants for those years that he was there. It's really unbelievable. And you know, I know we talk about. It's funny because we talk about the Baseball Hall of Fame, which we also had a couple guys make that Hall of Fame. That it's so specific, right? The Baseball Hall of Fame, you need to have like 3,000 hits as a hitter. You got to have like, you know, as a pitcher, you have to play for like 15 years and get like 3,000 strikeouts just even being considered for the Hall of Fame. The NFL is supposed to be the one that is the better, spot. Right? The better model, the better role model for what Hall of Fame should be. And to deny a guy like Eli Manning, for me, is also like you said, disgraceful. I would assume eventually he'll get in.
Yeah,
he'll get in.
He'll get in. But this stupid, like, oh, he's not deserving of a first ballot distinction is like the things that they do in baseball, and I hate when they do that
because these guys never played.
Because it's like, well, these guys never played, but then it's also like you're either a Hall of Famer or you're not. So I don't know why we're playing with oh, he's not really a Hall of Famer right now. Like obviously he's a Hall of Famer. Like if you want to use a baseball comparison, like Carlos Beltran's a Hall of Famer. Andrew Jones is a Hall of Famer. They're going to be Hall of Famers. You're just going to have to wait 5 years because that's what the voters do. Billy Wagner waited 10 years and he was probably a Hall of Famer. Like it was clear that he was going to be a Hall of Famer like 3 or 4 years ago. Like they do this all the time. But football doesn't really do it as often. I don't know. I'm not too in tune with the Football Hall of Fame to know, but I do know that they're a lot better about it than baseball is.
You know, maybe they're waiting for Eli Manning to get inducted alongside Tom Brady. Maybe that's their plan. Never know.
That'll be funny.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of quarterbacks coming up. I mean, Drew Brees is going to be eligible next year. Also, Phillip Rivers is going to be eligible. And I'm sorry, just have to throw it out there. If Eli Manning's not a Hall of Famer, Phillip Rivers isn't. But we'll see. We'll see what happens there. But Ben Roethlisberger's coming up the pipeline too. We got Tom Brady, and you know, if Aaron Rodgers retires, he's going to be coming soon. So a lot of all-time great quarterback talent's going to be coming. But I think that this was Eli's year to distinguish himself because he was the only marquee, high-profile quarterback in this class. I feel like it would have been nice to honor his legacy instead of him going alongside maybe a Drew Brees who maybe takes the spotlight a little bit away from him. I think that Eli Manning deserved it, and I think that this fan base, after what we went through this entire year, I think we deserved it as well.
And also about that, right, I saw the point brought up by someone on Twitter. Eli, had he been on either of those two teams playing on Sunday, you would have almost no doubt in your mind that the Giants would win. Or if the Giants were in that Super Bowl, you'd have almost no doubt that they would win if Eli was the quarterback, because that's how it felt back in 2011. And, you know, in 2007, maybe it was a bit more of a concern, but you felt confident that Eli had what it took because that his ability to turn it on in the postseason was unlike any other.
Exactly. I mean, it's almost sad in the way that I never did get to personally witness that 2017, but 2011, that was my first year of Giants fandom. I still remember that entire postseason. especially when you go into Lambeau Field against MVP Aaron Rodgers, the 15-1 Packers, and they demolished that team. And then we talk about the Patriots once again, just Bill Belichick, Tom Brady, just the greatest dynasty of all time. And he was able to step up when it mattered the most. He shined brighter than the greatest player in the sports history, and he did it twice. And I know that, it sounds like I'm being the dead horse saying that over and over again, but I don't think people appreciate how great that is. We see Patrick Mahomes get blown out in 2 Super Bowls against good defenses. Tom Brady won 7 Super Bowls. He was almost impossible to defeat for 20 years, and the only guy who ever had his number was Eli Manning. And to me, that's Hall of Fame worthy. And I don't think there's any other way you can say it.
With that being said, let's go to baseball. And
oh god,
let's
a lot of Yankee news.
There's a lot of things going
listen,
on.
let's just get it out of the way. Let's just commiserate.
Rip off the Band-Aid.
Juan Soto is with the Mets now.
God.
15 years, 700 and whatever, just a lot of money.
765 million.
A lot of money. Listen. This is what I hate about talking about this months after. There's nothing we could do about it. It's just the way the schedule turned out and the way, it took. It just so happens that like 5 days after he signed, or 5 days after we did our last semester was when he signed. Yeah. All the emotions were flowing as soon as he signed, right? I remember that night we actually were all together and we're talking about it. And,
of grief.
It started off. I don't even know the 5 stages of grief off the top of my head, but I'll tell you how.
Denial is one of them, and that was definitely the first one that I felt.
Yeah, no,
I remember your face. I remember that face.
I had a blank stare looking out the window for like a good 5 minutes, like, oh, this is life now. Juan Soto's a Met.
So, all right, I've all off season, the whole off season, I've just kind of been thinking, had all these thoughts in my head. So I'm going to try to put it together right now, and I guess we'll all do the same.
Go around in a circle.
That
discuss our feelings.
Look, he never had loyalty to any team, and that's not a knock on him. I would probably do the same thing he did, but it was obvious. I'd been saying this since he declined that offer from Washington back in like 2021. The reason they traded him was because he turned down $440 million from them because he wanted to make the most money when he became a free agent 5 years later.
It's like
or 4 years later.
22 when he did that.
Yeah.
It was crazy.
Right. Turns down $440 million. He then gets traded to San Diego, and he puts up, right, that team missed the playoffs in 2023, but not because of him. They end up trading him to the Yankees, not because he was a problem in San Diego, but because they knew they weren't going to pay him in free agency, and they had the money issues with him already there. So they traded him to the Yankees.
had just passed away as well.
Right. And they traded him to the Yankees, and we're talking about this, and people are talking about extending him, how important it is to re-sign him. But obviously, but again, it was evident from the second he turned down $440 million from the Nationals that this guy was going to test free agency. And he's most likely just going to take whatever the most amount of money is, even if it's by $5 million, which is what it ended up being, and plus add-ons from the Mets, right? Listen, he had no loyalty. That's not a knock on him, because if anybody in this game can have zero loyalty to a franchise and still be able to put his money where his mouth is, it's Juan Soto. He's going to go out there for the next at least 10 years, and he's going to be one of the top 3 best players in this game. And he's going to be right in the heart of that Mets lineup. And and the Mets, because a lot of people talking about him as possibly overpaid. He's not listen, is he overpaid? Does he deserve more than Ohtani? Absolutely not. That's the nature of this market. And with Juan Soto, it's not just the name, because at the end of the day, he's not going to sell more jerseys than Ohtani or Judge. It's not just about the name, the star player, star quality of that player. It's everything with him. It's his presence in the lineup. It's the fact that he's going to slide right into your lineup and play every single day, which is another thing, right? Playing every single day. He's not going to get hurt. And he's going to give you quality at-bats every single time he goes up there, and being right in the heart of that Mets order, and in an organization that has struggled to find that consistency. You think of some of the worst contracts in baseball history the Mets have dished out to players.
Automatic slam
This is one not only is he going to be a good player, I think he's already the greatest player that has ever put on a Mets uniform, without a doubt. I don't think it's a doubt. I don't think there's a doubt there, because number one before Soto, or greatest Met of all time, I think. All right,
not greatest Met of all time. Yeah, you can't put that. Yeah,
but I think he absolutely will.
Most talented.
Most
think you could-
talented, and I think the best baseball player to ever wear the Mets uniform.
but even though
Behind Willie Mays,
yeah,
I guess.
even
but,
though
I
the
mean,
price of
does
that
that count?
contract-
no, but I'm saying the best.
Nah, Willie Mays was like
No, I'm
in
not-
his late 30s.
I'm not
when
saying.
he
I'm not
was
saying that. I'm just saying like the
in
best
his prime.
player to
in his
ever
prime,
put, the best player to ever put on the Mets threads is, I guess, Willie Mays #2. But no, I think he's going to be the best. I think he's the best player the Mets have ever had in their prime, in his prime, and I think he will go down as the greatest man of all time because who's second? Tom Seaver. 300 wins, and he got his 300th win with the White Sox, and still was an All-Star with the Reds. No thanks. No, that's Juan Soto is going to be the greatest man of all time when it's all said and done.
Yeah, and 10 years of that contract is going to look amazing for
Yeah.
him because he's going to be 35 when he starts to decline, probably. Like and the tools that he has are not tools that really decline with age that much. I mean, you talk about the eye that he has, the discipline he has as a hitter. That's not going away anytime soon. I'm sorry. And he already, like everyone's like, oh yeah, he's just a DH and you're spending all that money on a DH. Yeah, you are, but like you are probably spending money on one of the greatest, most well-rounded hitters in Major League Baseball history.
Yeah.
And he's 25. He's not even in his prime yet. So, I mean, to say that it's an overpay, yeah. Should he have gotten more than Ohtani? No. But I mean, you're paying for the fact that he's 25 and you're going to get 10 years of basically his prime, his entire pre his prime and his entire prime. And his age 33, 34, 35, which are all going to be good. And then like the 5 years after that, probably going to feel like an albatross, but like, at that point, you don't care because at that point, you're probably going to imagine that they would have won something. At least you'd hope as a Mets fan. I mean, I hope not, but
Steve Cohen put his money where his mouth is. Listen, when he bought the team from the Wilpons, he made it clear that he was going to spend big money. He was going to make the Mets a marquee player in free agency, much like how the Yankees are, like the Dodgers are. And what better way could he do that than by taking away a star from the New York Yankees? And obviously, as a Yankees fan, I'm never going to respect Juan Soto for making the decision that he made. Just the fact that we were in the World Series and he left for the Mets for an extra $5 million as a fan. I'm never gonna get over that. But that's natural. That's what you would expect. But for Juan Soto, I think it was always a factor of him being, because if you're going to take a $700 million contract, you'd want to be the face of the franchise. He just wouldn't be here. I'm sorry. No matter what, he would always be living in 99 shadow because it's always has been and always will be Aaron Judge's team. He's the captain. But for the New York Mets, you were even saying he could potentially go down as the greatest Met of all time. So if you're a Juan Soto, a guy who already does have a championship under his belt, already going to be definitely, I think, a future Hall of Famer, we can already agree on that. I think you would rather take being the greatest Met of all time versus just being another great Yankee, and that's what it came down to for him.
And he's going to have a great opportunity to win with the Mets, even if I mean, they said that the Mets are he said that he sees better that the Mets could win. I don't know if that's true, but like, that's all Scott Boras in the media talking about, oh, well, he cares about the prospects and he cares. Juan Soto does not care about the Mets prospects, bro. Juan Soto does not care about the Mets chances of winning, maybe a little bit, but he wants to get the biggest bag. That's what he wants. And I will say I was wrong. I thought he had a number in his head. He did not have a number in his head. He was like, you guys go until you guys want to stop. And he kept going on getting his contract kept going up until the Yankees, in this case, until Hal Steinbrenner said, no, I'm not giving you that.
I really wanted to hypothetically know how much do you think, let's just say Cashman and I don't mean Cashman, I mean Steinbrenner and Cohen had blank checks. How high do you think that number would have gone up? Like, do you think they would have just kept going and do you think Dedut would have blanked?
It would have started with an
You
8.
think
It could have.
so?
Yeah, but I think Steinbrenner got to, that's what they were doing. They were giving him blank checks.
It's just Cohen.
Like, at what point would have Juan Soto just said, I want to be a Yankee or I want to be a Met?
Like, he wouldn't have.
No,
he was waiting.
Would've.
He was waiting
whatever the most
because they knew that Cohen was going to keep going to anywhere because Cohen, this is like a hobby and the Yankees run the team like it's a disciplined business. So the Yankees were going to tap out. It was always going to be the Yankees tapping out. That's why I always had a bad feeling about it. But I always was like, he's got a number. Like he's got a, like, if they hit 700 million, there's no way he's going to turn that down. But he did because he don't care. He doesn't care.
And I want to bring up something else. I'm glad you brought that up. That what we're hearing a lot of is like this narrative that the Yankees don't treat players' families well enough, and that the Mets now look, I'm sure the Mets have a priority in how they treat players' families. A lot of players in this offseason, like guys like even like Ryan Stanek, like guys that signed 1-year contracts with the team, talking about the family atmosphere. That's all fine. That's great. But to bring up this narrative that this family atmosphere or lack thereof that the Yankees have is the reason Soto chose the Mets, as if the Yankees mistreat players' families, mistreat people,
That was
Yankee Stadium
ridiculous.
security.
That
It's
was so
absolutely
ridiculous.
absurd.
It was just Boris trying to humanize them.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
It was only because of the money. It was all the money. The Mets were going to win this one from the beginning. We had hope because we thought maybe just playing that 1 year with the Yankees would give him that small ounce of maybe a desire to stay here, but he had no desire to stay here. And that's, as a Yankee fan, I hate it. As a baseball fan or as a human who strives to make money, yeah, sure, I respect it
that.
because listen, you're never gonna have that opportunity. And he talks about his family a lot. But I think when it came down to it, I think it was 99% money, and then 1% was to be the face of the Mets and to potentially see what else the Mets have to offer. And I think it was nothing more than maybe like a 30-second conversation once he got that offer from the Mets of 765 of, all right, probably sat down with his family, 30 seconds. Okay, I'm getting the most money from the Mets. That's most important to me. I go to the Mets. In 10 years, I'll be a god in Queens. And God forbid I bring a championship to the Mets. I'm not my number
That
retired.
becomes a dynasty.
Yeah. I mean, this guy, you're not going to be able to walk in Long Island, Queens, Brooklyn without this guy. He can get a free meal anywhere he wants in the city in 10 years from now. I mean, this guy, the Mets have never had that. They've never had a great player. Never. They've never had a great player.
That wouldn't have stuck out
They've never
as
had
a
a great
Yankee
player.
as much.
They've never had a great player because you think of David Wright. He was a good player, good generational player.
But he's not
Very
even a Hall
nice.
of Famer,
No.
David Wright.
No.
He was
Tom
he was
Seaver is a very
their
good
captain,
pitcher.
but he was a very good player.
Exactly.
So,
Tom Seaver, very good pitcher, one of the best ever, Hall of Famer. Not the type of guy you'd expect to be the number one player in your franchise history. Carlos Beltran, okay, he's a good player.
He didn't play long enough with them, and they never won a championship.
Exactly.
So you couldn't.
Keith Hernandez, I think the same thing.
Mike Piazza,
sure, it's the same thing.
Brought them to a World Series, but they didn't finish.
None of the guys on the '86 team are really making the Hall of Fame. They're all
they're all washed out.
So really, the Mets have never had a guy who would rank, I think, even in the top 5 of baseball heading into any single year, ever. I mean, it's with the Mets. It's always been right. You think of the top sayings in Mets history. It's you got to believe, and it's the miracle Mets. Those are the two things because everything with them is a miracle. And if they make the playoffs, if they get there, it's always a miracle. It's all through
those
bits and gimmicks.
Even this year was the most egregious example of that.
Even those two
that
World
entire
Series
season was a gimmick.
2015, they got no hit. They had to stay. They went for Yoenis Cespedes, and they still had to see Daniel Murphy sign with the Nationals the year after. Right, that team had so many gimmicks and bits of their own. The '86 team,
but boy, that rotation was really good.
It was very good.
DeGrom, Syndergaard, Harvey.
Yeah,
Steven Matz, I think, was like really good at that time.
Yeah,
I'm probably missing someone, but
yeah, no, it was. I mean, I think they had Colin too.
Oh my
I
God,
think they did. Yeah, he was good. So finally, the Mets are building a culture where the best player is not just choosing the Yankees because they're the Yankees.
Yeah,
he chose the Mets for the most money, yes, but now guys are going to really evaluate their options when in free agency from now on, and the Mets are a realistic option. It's not right, because again,
now they have an owner that's not milking the team for as much as it's worth. They have an owner that's willing to spend. I mean, for Steve Cohen, this is like a hobby. Like this is a drop in the bucket.
Yeah,
this is like, I drop a dollar bill on the floor and I walk away from it. That's what he did with Juan Soto. Like that's how rich he is, which is absurd to think about. But like, he's able to do that. And like this is a hobby to him, which again with the Yankees it's not the case. Hal Steinbrenner and the Steinbrenner family, while they do put a lot of money in the team, they do not make like rash signings like this. They don't overpay players as often. Like in recent memory, I can't remember a time where the Yankees have done something like this and I don't think they will again.
Mhm.
They're not. This is not George Steinbrenner's team anymore. There's more mouths to feed. They're not the majority. Like they are the majority owners, but they're not. There's so many minority
They're
owners
business
there.
people.
Everyone's trying to get a piece. Everyone's trying to get money.
think-
They have the highest revenue in the league, and they want to make sure that they make a lot of profit from it. And they spend a lot, but they spend, not a high percentage of their revenue. Like not like the Dodgers or the Mets or any of these other teams.
Well, I think we have to talk about how the Yankees responded in their
Right.
offseason. 4 major players: Max Fried, Devin Williams, Cody Bellinger, and Paul Goldschmidt. So
What's going on? I can't. Can you guys hear that?
Yeah, oh, loud and clear.
I don't hear it at all.
it was an air horn, in
Really?
case you're wondering.
I can hear it from over here, but I just.
But yeah,
It was very loud. You didn't want to hear that.
So we started off with Max Fried. That happened basically. That was our immediate response to Juan Soto. Obviously, there's some injury concerns with Max Fried, especially considering that contract's going to be later on. But you talk about solidifying that rotation, add in once again, because this is what it kind of sucks, because this is what originally Carlos Rodon was supposed to be. He was supposed to be this clear, definitive number 2 behind Garrett Cole, but
1A.
obviously it was 1A, but 1B, but it hasn't worked out as well for him. So Max Fried is now going to try to step into this role. Hopefully he can be successful. The Devin Williams trade was the most surprising to me, because I thought that Luke Weaver was going to be the closer going forward. I think he earned it with how he pitched in the postseason, but you never can have enough bullpen arms. I mean, Devin Williams and Luke Weaver, that's a filthy 8-9 combo.
You can stop on Devin Williams to say your Nestor Cortez eulogy if you want.
Oh, thank you for. See, I almost forgot about that.
Yeah, I wanted to make sure that you got your moment in the sun with Nestor Cortez Jr.
I was very upset.
You have the floor.
Very, very upset that Nestor Cortez left. For those of you who don't know, Nestor Cortez was my second favorite Yankee behind Aaron Judge. Just really was unfortunate what happened in Game 1 of the World Series, but I don't think that a pitcher who has played for the Yankees in recent years has ever had as much sort of heart, had as much sort of I mean, we're talking about a guy who, I mean, that's one way to put it. I mean, he's a guy who really no one thought would have ever become a major league starter. What was he, like a 30th round draft pick? 34.
Yeah, you could talk about how he signed a minor league free agent with the Yankees, and that's how he.
I mean,
he was a Rule 5
he pitched a couple innings in the majors before for the Orioles. I mean, he had a little stint with the Yankees before, but really 2021, he comes out of nowhere with this mustache, and he became an all-star, which it's such an insane revelation. And it's not just the mustache and all that. I mean, just so many plays where he's diving to first base, he's making these ridiculous plays. I mean, to me, also the stuff that he always did with his legs, just from off timing. Always be one of the most fun pitchers I'll ever watch. He wasn't the best pitcher, but he just was really fun to watch. And I'll always miss Nestor Cortez. People are unfortunately always going to remember his legacy because of the Freddie Freeman home run. Yeah, I don't think that's deserved. I think Nestor Cortez is a guy who truly loved being a Yankee. He said it himself many times. I think Nestor Cortez Jr. was a great Yankee, and I hope history remembers it that way.
Yeah. No, I totally agree, because he was also my second favorite Yankee for a while as well. And I don't know if that's I don't know. I feel like, obviously the Yankees have put together good teams, but it just feels like he was the second most likable Yankee, probably the most, honestly. He just had a great personality. I mean, we don't see a lot of players nowadays that only want to be Yankees, and that's one thing about Aaron Judge, a guy who was getting criticized a lot after his performances in October. Listen, especially after the Juan Soto sweepstakes were over, I think it was important for us to take some time to appreciate what we have in Aaron Judge as a guy who took a lot less money from
Look what the Padres
Yankees.
Offered him.
Exactly. Yeah. Where he could have just went to the Padres and probably would have been not irrelevant, but they wouldn't have made the playoffs. They wouldn't have been, now they probably are going to make the playoffs. Not nearly the star that he is in New York right now. And the captain wouldn't mean as much to do that on the Padres as it does on the Yankees. So got to remember that for Aaron Judge. But Nestor Cortez, listen, we loved him. He was an all-star, one of the most fun players to ever watch, that I've ever had the opportunity to watch. And just, one of those guys that, whenever we went to a Yankee game and we saw he was pitching, it was never a boring start. It was never boring. We always, I guess, it was always highly anticipated.
Yeah, I would always watch every Nestor Cortez start, and that's not something you say a lot for a pitcher usually of that caliber. You think you would mostly do that for a Garrett Cole, but that's just truly what this guy brought to the table. I think that one of the most fun pitchers I'll ever watch, and like I said, I'm going to miss him, and I truly do wish him all the best in Milwaukee. I'm going to be rooting for him.
and he wasn't scared of anyone. He would do that pump fake to Shohei Ohtani. He would do the hesitations to Bryce Harper. He didn't have a single person that he feared, and so had a lot of respect for him. But I think we should talk about the guys the Yankees got. Max Fried, first of all, was completely shocked when the Yankees made that signing. I knew they had interest in him. I knew they wanted him. I knew they were talking
Picked
to
up
him.
steam after the Soto signing.
Exactly. I don't think a lot of people think it was a knee-jerk reaction to Soto leaving. I don't think that's what it was. I think they legitimately loved Max Fried, and I think they were always preparing as Max Fried as one of their first, fallback options. Apparently now, because Alex Bregman talks have fizzled out, that's not happening. That they originally considered just Bregman, and they instead decided to do what they did now. I think this was the right choice. Max Fried is a terrific pitcher. They gave him the highest contract a left-handed pitcher's ever gotten in the history of Major League Baseball, which I was shocked by. I was also shocked they gave him 8 years, but it's the Yankees way. They do this all the time, trying to give more AAV, higher AAV for more years for less AAV. That's exactly why they gave him 8 years. I believe he could still be a quality pitcher in 8 years, the way he pitches. I'm personally a huge fan of that signing. I think he's different than Carlos Rodon because he's more of a pitch-to-contact guy. I think he's built for the bigger stage a little more than Carlos Rodon is. I think it takes a little pressure off Carlos Rodon as well in the rotation. And
There's more history of success there with Max Fried as well.
If you think of the World Series in 2021, performing
Known
in Game
winner.
6 at Houston, right? He's going to be great. He's going to be a fun pitcher to watch, and he's like Garrett Cole in that he's always finding ways to improve. He's always finding ways he's always adding pitches. He's very serious, very cares about his craft. A hard worker. I think he also wants to be here. I know he obviously took the money over anything, but I do think there is a big part of him that really wants to be here, wants to succeed and help this team win. Then they made the trade for Devin Williams, which I don't think it has much to do with a lack of belief in Luke Weaver, but rather that we have options now. They
also needed strikeouts in the bullpen.
Yeah.
Which was a huge problem with Clay Holmes, who's now Met, but also other players in the bullpen.
Totally. And I think I don't know what they're gonna do, but let's say whoever they choose to close, if that guy struggles,
it will be Williams.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, Williams will start the year as a closer.
And I think Williams will do fine because he's done that.
Absolutely.
But say he was to struggle, Luke Weaver's fallback option because he was lights out in that position last year.
That's a crazy good 1-2 punch, and you feel really good about that, which you didn't really feel that way last year. So,
and we talked about the middle of last year with Clay Holmes. I mean, we were scared of every single ninth inning, and now have that luxury of having both Weaver and Williams. I mean, it really is attacking one of your biggest weaknesses, which is what you want to do in the offseason.
Right. And Paul Goldschmidt, who is one that I know, Colin, you weren't the biggest fan of.
I'm absolutely not, because it just feels like such typical Yankees move to make. I get the fact that, it's not a big contract, but just once again, a guy who's 37 years old, and you're expecting him to stay at the same level or be better. I mean, I know
you're expecting him to be better. He was like below league average last year,
and that's just bad practice. This is what the Yankees do so many times. I know it's not the same thing because there's more money attached to it, but it just reeks of Josh Donaldson to me. It just reeks of a situation where this guy's going to be bad in 220 in May and June, and Aaron Boone's still going to have to justify keeping him in the lineup every day because he's Paul Goldschmidt. He's won an MVP. I don't like it. I see it backfired. I really hope I'm wrong because I want this team to win next year. But out of all the moves that Brian Cashman made, I'm not a fan of that one. I hope I'm wrong, though.
I can imagine that working out okay, but probably not ideal. I think it's better than I think it's an upgrade over Rizzo. I hope to God that they don't trade for Nolan Arenado.
Apparently that's out of the cards.
That looks like a disaster.
Well, we talk about there's still a massive hole at third base, which they still haven't addressed yet, which interestingly, Aaron Boone said Jazz Chisholm's playing second, which is what I wanted. But what are we supposed to expect? DJ LeMahieu's the opening day third baseman?
That's what they're gonna do an open competition. I think they talked about this. Oswaldo Cabrera, Oswald Peraza, and DJ LeMahieu.
Unless their strategy is just to have that massive gap at third base and then maybe try to pick up a piece of the deadline.
Right. Yeah. They also did. I also heard a story about DJ LeMahieu being considered for DFA, and the whole clubhouse revolted against it and said no. So begged them not to. Which, if that's true, is concerning to me because why are the players dictating? DJ LeMahieu we know he's washed. You cannot pedal out DJ LeMahieu at third base like he's going to be 2020, 2019 DJ LeMahieu. He's not that player anymore. I'm sorry, but he's done. Like, he's gone. Like, he is not the player that he was. He had a very good run for us. He was very good for us in those first few years of his contract, but he is very injury prone. He is feeble, and he does not. What he was doing before does not work anymore.
Right.
He cannot be if DJ LeMahieu is starting games more than 5 games in the entire season, we are so cooked.
Right. First of all, let me get to talk about Paul Goldschmidt. I actually really like it, and I'll tell you why. First of all, there really weren't many other great options.
Brian Cashman propaganda.
I agree with you on that. I agree with you on that.
The other options,
Nathaniel Lowe would have been nice.
Nathaniel Lowe was that was the move that you should have made, because
that was the move that was twerking for them
what
to make.
What did the Nationals give up there? I mean, you're telling me the Yankees couldn't have given that up?
They gave up a reliever.
You're telling me the Yankees couldn't have done that?
Nathaniel Lowe is not the type of guy that I'm kicking myself for not getting.
Sure, but you're going to be kicking yourself in the postseason when this guy's the next Edwin Encarnacion batting 200 in the lineup.
Goldschmidt is getting at bats in the postseason. Something went right, because first base is a very replaceable position. You have Cody Bellinger, who could take over that position if things don't go well. That's you're going a little.
I mean,
too far.
there
are plenty of options at the trade deadline.
I'm sure
Nathaniel Lowe could be that option.
Nationals aren't going to be
they're not going to be great. They made that signing for that, I think, solely so that they could get a good offer at the trade deadline for him. And someone can emerge. You never know who's going to struggle. You never know who's going to be available. And if there's any position that usually sees the most players get traded at the deadline, it is first base. For 1 year, I'll tell you, I understand the Donaldson vibes, but I think of this more along the lines of, or I think this is the exact.
I was more sick to my stomach with Donaldson.
Absolutely, because that was guaranteed, 2 guaranteed years, $50 million overall guaranteed to him. That was also your entire offseason in 2022. That was the whole offseason.
Don't forget about IKF.
That was
oh my god, that was a disaster.
They did nothing else. And that stops them from getting other players. They couldn't bring in Freeman or Olsen
Correa
or Seager or Semien.
They cleared up the money
guys.
Because
they couldn't do any of that because they got Josh Donaldson for 2 years, and they were still paying him last year, the buyout in 2024. That $5 million of our payroll went to Donaldson last year. You dedicated 3 years to Josh Donaldson, who's retired last year. Paul Goldschmidt, if he struggles, so what? It's over. I think of this exactly along the lines as the Yankees signing Corey Kluber a couple years ago for that 1 year contract.
Yeah, it's not as much of a risk.
It's a 1 year deal, low risk, high reward.
It's less than 15 million, right?
I think it's exactly 15 million.
Is it?
Kluber was exactly the same thing. They were impressed by him. So they liked something about him. They liked his career resume. They thought there was a lot left in the tank. And Kluber was all right. Kluber was definitely not the problem.
He was a good mentor for those younger players.
Right. He pitched a no-hitter. He got hurt. That's something that can happen with Paul Goldschmidt. He can get hurt, but you got to have a backup option there in case he does get hurt.
We have to talk about Cody Bellinger because we haven't brought him up yet.
Yeah. So Cody Bellinger. Now, first of all, I want to say when it comes to third base, and you guys are talking about DJ LeMahieu not getting DFA'd, that the players didn't want him DFA'd. How about this story coming out that Gleyber Torres was supposed to play third base when Jazz got here, and he's just straight up said no.
I hate to speak ill of Gleyber Torres.
What does that tell you about the coaching staff on this organization?
It's also just the respect that Aaron Boone commands. I mean, that's what happens when you're too much of a player's manager. You have to. There has to be some sort of accountability. There has to be,
and there's none. Now, I'm not too concerned about it because they made the World Series last year. And
Gleyber, to his credit, hit well in the postseason. He was a good leadoff hitter for that team.
He struggled on defense, though. He did.
I mean,
he made that error in game one. I mean, he
lost us that game.
So he wants to have that ego.
Part of the reason, if you want to point to a reason why we lost the game, Gleyber Torres is why we were in that position.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Juan Soto also very poorly played a ball in the outfield.
I mean, you can point to.
It's a good thing we won't have him in the outfield.
Yeah, who needed that guy?
Cody Bellinger. Cody Bellinger. And just wrapping up here, almost done here. Cody Bellinger, outfielder, primarily will be an outfielder, playing center field. Aaron Boone said, and looks like we're gonna have Jason Dominguez in left field, who got the number 24. So that's really cool.
I'm very glad Alex Verdugo gave him the grace to wear it.
Yeah, such a nice guy.
Thank God he's gone.
Cody Bellinger. I honestly view the Cody Bellinger trade as almost under the same lens as Goldschmidt. because even though he's younger, he's another one.
I think there's more upside with Cody Bellinger, especially a lefty who lofts the ball. Center fielder who actually provides better defensive value than Judge is going to give you. You can put Judge back at right. I mean, there's a lot more value there, especially like a center fielder is way more valuable than a first baseman.
I was never a fan of signing Cody Bellinger. I wanted him that offseason. I think it was 2023 because in 20 or it was 20. It was before 2020.
Before he went to the Cubs.
Before he went to the Cubs that year, which you remember was a very good year for him. It was a very good year for him. That was after 2022, right? Because it was 2023 was his first year with the Cubs. He had put up like an MVP year with the Cubs in 2023. They signed Rodon, they signed Judge, and they needed another outfielder. And even though I never wanted Bellinger originally because he was one of the most inconsistent players I'd ever seen, but he was really one of the only options on the free agent market at that point. Getting that 1-year contract, which he proved was good enough for another contract from the Cubs. That's how good he was in 2023. He's a great defender, but I just think he's so inconsistent with the bat. He's another one. He really wants to be here. His dad, he would grow up a Yankee fan. His dad played for the Yankees on those
I could see this working
98, 99 teams. It could definitely work out. I could also see him batting like 150 with a 500 OPS by July. And we're,
this offseason is not a sure thing, but I do see the path to success here. So
I'm happy. I like him. I'm rooting.
This is one of the better off seasons they've had in a while.
Don't get me wrong. I like Bellinger. I'm rooting for him. I think things can go very well here. I just and I mean this in the nicest way. I would not be totally surprised if we're talking about Joey Gallo. I would not be totally shocked.
I don't think he's as bad as Joey Gallo.
I mean, I never was truly crazy about Joey Gallo in the first place because you saw how just awful he was at making contact.
Bellinger,
I mean, Cody Bellinger on the Cubs, that's still like a 260 hitter. I don't see it being.
But you look at some of his years with the Dodgers, right? He was terrible. I mean, we're talking 500.
He was off the
OPS,
Zaw. It doesn't count.
It was. I mean, you have
I don't even think he remembers those years.
You have to wonder. I mean, there was this guy at one point was legitimately a terrible baseball player in this league.
Yeah, but he was also an MVP.
Yeah,
he was also an MVP.
So you don't know
and rookie of the year.
So I like this.
It's a mixed bag with him. You don't know which version
I'm
of Cody
saying
you're getting.
When Joey Gallo got traded here, I was not a fan of that. I wasn't. A lot of people were saying he's going to hit 100 home runs at Yankee Stadium. I figured he's going to.
Don't forget, he was the first Yankee to wear number 13 after A-Rod.
Right.
So,
listen, I think I'm not saying I have as much hope for Cody Bellinger as I did when Joey Gallo got traded here. I'm just saying I would not be shocked if this turns out to be like that, where he's striking out more times than he's getting hits, and his average is in the 100s. And
Bellinger's
other
a
than
lot
playing
better
defense,
at making contact than.
I hope.
Gallo's like one of the worst in the league at making contact.
Again, I'm very happy about it. I'm glad they made the trade. It also didn't cost much prospect. You just gave up Cody Petit. That was it.
Yeah.
It's just about money. This is the move I would have made. I'm happy about it. I'm rooting for him. I like him a lot. I might even buy his T-shirt. I like him a lot.
Oh.
But
where are you getting the T-shirt from? Getting a deal on that or?
Any sites you have in mind?
No.
Yeah.
What about you? You got a site?
DH Gate. There it is. There we go. I'll plug DH Gate any day of the week.
I really hope it works out for the sake of this team, is all I'm saying.
Well, I think that is all the time we have for our first show.
Tim Hill's back. Tim
Hill is back. Very happy about that.
And then we traded Trevino for Trevino.
Also, Loizaga as well got re-signed.
Yes,
during that time.
And then we traded Trevino for
Fernando Cruz.
Yes,
and that was a good trade.
All right. Wanted to make sure.
I think that could be another Map Lake special.
Any other additions that we might be missing?
No, I mean
Carlos Carrasco is on a minor league deal.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I said nothing. Oh, it's nothing.
Right. I mean,
there's a bunch of 40-man moves past few days, but never get attached to those. I think Owen White was DFA'd yesterday.
Around baseball, I'm trying to think of other big moves that happened. I mean,
did Adames sign?
Yeah, he was the Giants. That happened after our
Pete Alonso's back with the Mets.
Alonso is back with the Mets, which that's another first baseman option.
Roki Sasaki.
All right. We don't have much time to discuss this, but
we'll say that for next episode. We'll have to keep the fans waiting.
There's not really much to say. Once to the Dodgers, he's a
all 5 of you.
He's a follower.
We love you.
With Snell and Hernandez. And
this will be fun to watch back later.
So, there really is nothing else to talk about. Roki just was decided to be a follower and join the Dodgers. I think other than that, Bregman, or maybe Alex Bregman will sign by next week because looks like
Oh my god, it seems like he's never gonna find.
I mean, don't get me wrong. If he goes to the Red Sox, that's going to be a lot to talk about because then they're going to be. I think they're our biggest rivals if they get Bregman for next year for the pennant. I think.
I don't think he's going to the Red Sox. I think it's either Tigers.
It
looks like Tigers.
Apparently, Alex Cora is in love with the idea of having him, but
I think he'll be good, and I think he'd be good in Fenway. But
yeah,
who else is out there?
I don't know.
Alex Verdugo still on the market, ladies and gentlemen.
Flaherty went back to the Tigers.
How do you like that? Alex Verdugo played left field in the World Series for this team last year. Not a single team wants him. What does that tell you?
He had no business starting.
Anthony Rizzo too.
They had no business starting on a World Series
roster
team
last year, and not a soul wants them.
Anthony Rizzo also started games at first base.
Yeah,
John Birdie is on a team.
He's on a team. He deserves to be on a team. I think
John Birdie came to the Yankees defense. You know what?
Don't forget John Birdie did start a game in the ALCS at first base.
He did.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Legend.
that's kind of ridiculous to me when you think about
only,
this roster.
Like holes that they knew were there that they never fixed.
Apparently, a lot of people believe
factors.
the third baseman for this team next year is not currently on the roster. So that's something to watch.
Maybe Oswaldo Cabrera takes a leap. You know, who knows?
I don't know. That's what we thought.
Oswald Peraza, guys.
I think Oswaldo
personally
is good in a platoon.
The guy I'm looking at right now, and this is really not going to go well with a lot of fans, but I like Justin Turner because he's almost the guy that never ages. He's like 38, but he never ages. No,
he was so bad last year.
He was good with the Mariners.
No, he was not. No,
again, we're not.
Justin Turner was not good.
Dude,
check the receipts. Check the receipts. I'm telling you,
64, 766, 5 homers in
5 homers.
48 games.
48 games.
You have to understand we're playing we have no options at third. That's not bad. He's a guy who he's old, but on a 1-year contract, he almost never
40-year-old. You know, another 40-year-old on the roster after Paul Goldschmidt.
I mean, who else is out there? Everyone else is signed.
Listen, you need someone. We could argue about this all day, but we have to wrap up here. I think Dom should wrap it up. I don't think you've ever done it before.
I get to wrap it up?
Yeah, do it.
Oh, what do I do? I don't even know.
Whatever you want.
Wow, there's so many options here. All right. Thank you guys for watching Woodlawn Station. We love you very much. Please join us next week for our next episode. All right. I think we're good. Thank you.